So once again, hopefully you've clicked on resubmit, so a text box will open up in the October daily participation. So 3 significant things. Power in Congress. Obviously, 435 people in the House, 100 in the Senate, that's a lot of people. And so power is going to be concentrated in a fewer number of hands. And we can find the first step where they try to concentrate power in the committee chairs. We've already talked about before how Congress, of course, can't look at all the bills all together. And so they're often sifted into different committees having to deal with the major topic of the bill. So the Agricultural Committee is going to look at the bill providing relief assistance for farmers that have suffered from drought. So the committee chair is the one that's going to decide, of course, if this bill is going to be first on the calendar or last on the calendar. They're going to decide how to schedule meetings for it. They're going to decide the final approval on what kind of evidence and witnesses are going to be called before the committee, and then the order and time, of course, each member is going to have in questioning it and so on. So the committee chair, that seems kind of mundane. It seems like secretarial work, but really it has a lot of power over what happens with these bills, because if it's put way at the end of the calendar, or if it's not given a lot of time for review, for instance, then the bill is probably going to be killed. So the committee chair can purposely do things with this administrative process to kill legislation. The committee chairs are usually the most senior member of the majority party, but they can also change that. Some of the parties do have rules about people not holding on to committee chairs for long periods of time, but usually they are one of the more senior people. Also having some influence would be the ranking member of the minority party. They just speak on behalf of the minority party to the chair, but obviously the chairperson doesn't have to do anything that they say since they are part of the majority. 3 committees that are incredibly important include appropriations. Appropriations is in charge of the money, so they appropriate or take and distribute money. And obviously, since they're the ones that handle money, they're going to be some of the most influential, because lobbyists from different companies or organizations are going to want to meet and greet with these people as much as possible. They get large amounts of money donated to their campaigns because of that, and they can also then share that money with other members of Congress and candidates. And so getting on the Appropriations Committee is incredibly significant. And then there's also the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee obviously sets up the rules. They set up the procedures of how the different houses are going to work. Both the House and the Senate, according to Article 1 of the Constitution, are allowed to establish their own rules. And so I mentioned earlier they might eventually get rid of the filibuster if the Democrats take control of the Senate and they have a majority. They'll obviously have a majority in all the committees, including the Rules Committee. One of the first things they'll probably do is vote to get rid of the debate rule. So they'll basically say, instead of needing 60 votes, you'll only need 51 votes in order to stop debate. The other one that I'll mention would be the Steering Committee, and the Steering Committee is the one that decides how the different pieces of legislation will fall on the calendar for the floor of the House or the Senate. And so the Steering Committee has power in distributing legislation on particular days of the year. The next thing I'll mention would be the whips. The whips, which is WHIPS, they exist in both parties, and they help the parties make sure that their party members are voting in a particular way on legislation. So, for instance, if the farming bill comes up and the Republicans say, wait, we represent a lot of states with rural areas and a lot of farms, so we need to make sure everyone votes for this farming bill, they will send the whip around to make sure that each one is going to do that. Now, they can't order someone to vote in favor of a bill, but what they can do is say, if you don't vote for this, we'll never support any of your future legislation. We won't donate any money to your campaign, and we might even recruit someone to run against you in the next primary election when the nominations happen. So the whips will use that in order to intimidate other members. If a member is incredibly popular and independent, then obviously that's not going to work on them, but it does on most. Then there's the actual leaders. Both parties and both houses have leaders, the majority and the minority. And they basically strategize how the party is going to react to legislation and what they should support. They typically give the marching orders to the whips to make sure that they're enforcing these decisions. And so often they have a lot of influence over the membership. In the Senate in particular, the majority leader is the most important person. And in the 116th Congress, that's Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. He, of course, is incredibly concerned about losing the majority because he could end up losing that position if the Republicans aren't successful. And then there's the Speaker. The Speaker of the House is the most powerful person in that body. And even though they're supposed to be kind of neutral and they're just supposed to maintain order in the House, obviously, being from the majority party, they are going to exert a lot of influence over the majority leader in the House. And so basically, the Speaker is the most powerful person in the House of Representatives, while the majority leader is the most powerful person in the Senate. And of course, the current Speaker of the House is Nancy Pelosi. Now, it's important that these people in these leadership positions often come from what we call safe districts or safe seats. In other words, it's unlikely that they're going to lose an election because you don't want a leader who has to worry about getting reelected with only 51% of the vote. And they have to go through tough elections and spend all their time working on that. So usually they come from districts or states where they're going to get 55, 60% of the vote and so on. So it's rare that they're ever targeted. And usually they're experienced people that have a lot of seniority and have been in office for a considerable period of time, building up favors from other people because these individuals have to be voted on. The majority has to vote in favor of the Speaker. The majority has to vote in favor of the majority leader. So they need to make sure that they're helping other people with their campaigns, getting people within their own party promoted and running for office, and so on. So in doing that, they kind of build a network in order to gain their own popularity and take up one of these positions of leadership.